What's up, everybody? This is the Tied to the Land podcast, where we believe that everybody is tied to the land in some way, shape, or form. On this podcast, we'll explore the intimate connection that people feel with the land beneath their feet, while telling the stories of folks whose lives have been impacted by their roots to the rural lifestyle. This podcast is brought to you by Arrowhead Land Company, where their mission is to create, inspire, or advance a connection to the land in every person throughout the world. What's up, everybody? My name's Andrew Schultz, and I'm here with Jason Ramsey today from Rural First. Really pumped to be talking with him today. It's been a minute since we've pumped out a podcast, and so we've been cooking up lots of good stuff here internally, but Jason is going to be an awesome person to bring in here and get you guys tuned back in with the podcast and hopefully start another hot streak here of good content. So he's a wealth of knowledge. Jason, thank you for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you, man. So Jason's here with Rural First, like I said, and I want you to just tell everybody about yourself first of all, and how you got into the business. You know, you're affiliated with Oklahoma AgCredit, and I want you to just run us through all of that and how you started, how you got to where you're at, how it's impacted your family, anything you want to share with everybody.
Okay, well, thanks again for having me. Really, my story with Rural First starts prior to that in the last 2 years. It goes all the way back to the days of Oklahoma AgCredit and the farm credit system. Personally, I live in McAlester, Oklahoma. Got a beautiful wife, 3 great kids. I am Shakota, Oklahoma boy, born and bred. That's where I'm from, but I do reside in McAlester. And one thing about where I'm located is it is very, very wide spectrum as far as my customer base. We are rural Oklahoma. I mean, the Oklahoma AgCredit system and Rural First, we are rural America. And so I think my personal background really corresponds and ties into my professional background. Professionally, I started in commercial banking in 05, 06 in a local hometown bank. In 2013, I went to work for the farm credit system. And since then, the changes have just been astronomical from the business perspective.
If you don't mind me pausing really quick, what prompted that change from commercial to rural? I mean, was it because you're passionate about the rural space, or I mean, what was that? Or was it a product of the market at that time, or what prompted that?
It was I would say it's a multifaceted transition and reasoning. With the commercial, you have that relationship with your customer, but not like you do as an ag lender. As a rural and ag lender, you really get to know your customer. You get to know their operation. They're not just a number. You know the name, the face, you know their kids, you know everything about them. And so it was more of that personal aspect that I really missed on the commercial side that I really enjoyed on the rural and Oklahoma AgCredit side.
Would you say that's a product of just the agriculture culture, or the values of the agricultural culture? These people, they speak a different language than maybe who you're used to working with on the commercial side of things. I mean, is that fair to say?
Absolutely the truth. Because you can foster and build that relationship with your lender when you have mutual grounds that you both understand and common interest, whether it be raising cattle, whether it be deer hunting, whether it be anything in recreational properties. I've had customers that we got along just because we simply rode motorcycles and Harleys together. So you have to have that personal aspect and connection with your customers to truly benefit both parties. And I feel like the farm credit system does that on the ag side.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't really understand that there's different types of lending for different scenarios. And so I want to get into that today, because obviously Rural First is a niche. Oklahoma AgCredit is a niche. And, most folks, they're probably used to walking into their local bank, and they don't necessarily offer what you guys can offer. And I know we can't dive into details today about, what are your interest rates compared to other banks and so on and so forth. But talk to us about the difference in that experience, coming back to culture and values. What is the experience when a farmer or rancher walks into AgCredit as opposed to maybe the local bank where, they've got a relationship, or their cousin heads up the bank there? I'm sure you run into that a lot.
All the time.
We run into it as real estate agents as well, where somebody has no business listing a property, but because they're Aunt Susie, they go ahead and get the listing. and I shouldn't stereotype. It could be Uncle Bobby or whoever it is, But talk to us about that. What is the value in somebody coming into a Rural First Oklahoma AgCredit as opposed to whoever they're used to doing business with?
It goes back to that common relationship and common interest that you have with that customer. I've actually got numerous bankers that are my competition on the street, but they come to me for their loans because they know I understand.
We won't name their names.
Well, we won't name their names. Privacy issues. But they come to us because we understand their operation. We understand the market. We understand the cattle prices, the wheat prices, the corn prices better than that commercial bank aspect. Because with the commercial bank, typically it's just, here's our product, here it is, take it or leave it. You tailor to fit what the bank needs you to do. With us, we try to tailor what the customer needs and come to us. And so it's just a totally different atmosphere. And when the Farm Credit System was enacted in 1916 by Woodrow Wilson, that was the whole motivation behind that, was to benefit and help rural America. Whereas at the end of the day, the commercial bank is just about making money. They're about making the almighty dollar and being profitable. With AgCredit and the Farm Credit System, we are a nonprofit co-op. In essence, we are owned by our borrowers. So if you come to us and you borrow money to purchase your land, you in essence are my boss at that point because you vote for the board of directors. They tell us what to do. So on the cooperative side of it, you actually have a voice in the way the business is ran. So that's a huge difference from a commercial to the cooperative setup like we have.
That's awesome, man. And what would you say, what percentage of lenders are structured like that? I mean, is that pretty rare, pretty unique?
The only ones that I know of is the Farm Credit System is the only cooperative.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's why I wanted to bring it up. That's a huge deal, I would think, because like you said, most banks are about the almighty dollar, and you guys are structured totally different, which enables you to provide a different type of service.
Mm-hmm. Since I think it was 1997, it used to be the East Central Farm Credit System. Now it's Oklahoma AgCredit because we merged with another association. Now we're all one. But since 1997, we've given back over $100 million to our borrowers in interest dividends. When was the last time a bank gave any money back to you for a house loan or a car loan?
Yeah, wow.
So last year we gave a little over $16 million back just in 1 year, which equated about 1% reduction on your interest rate.
Yeah, so I want you to elaborate on that a little bit for the folks listening who might not be familiar with that system, because that's a huge advantage that not even I knew this entire time until you guys came and talked to our group last time you were in the office here. So just expound on that a little bit for us, that 1% and what that's called and what that looks like. Okay. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, when a borrower comes to us, we charge them typically $1,000 for farm credit stock. And with that stock, it's not like publicly traded, you can't get on and buy it unless you are a borrower. But that $1,000 worth of farm credit stock makes you eligible for the patronage. And at the end of the year, after we pay all our bills, we take care of all of our overhead and everything, we take a portion of that and we give it back to our customers in the form of a patronage dividend. We do have to keep some, of course, for capital, operating expenses and stuff like that, but we always take a large portion of it and give it back to our customers. That percentage is based off what our board recommends. So when the board comes together, they say, hey, we want to give our customers that 1% dividend again this year, we make it happen.
Yeah. So is it fair to say, to take it even further and to put it into layman's terms even more, if somebody comes to you and they've got a 7% interest rate on their loan, essentially it's like having a 6%
That's correct.
rate almost, because they're getting 1% back.
That's correct.
Which is really cool. That's really cool. Yeah, thank you for elaborating on that. And one of the things I was going to ask you is what sets you apart from other lenders, and I think that's definitely one of the things, but is there anything else you want to touch on as it relates to what makes you guys unique?
I'm personally biased about this because I've lived both spectrums. I've lived the commercial and the ag side. And actually there are several of lenders over the years that have come from the commercial banking to the ag sector with Oklahoma AgCredit or the Farm Credit System. Actually, my ex-boss was another loan officer with me at the bank we both came from. And so what really sets us apart goes back to that personal relationship with that customer. We're going to go out in the field with that customer. We're going to go out and check cattle with that customer, spend the day or time with them, whatever we need to do to understand their operation. I can honestly say that our lenders with Oklahoma AgCredit go above and beyond because we treat people the way we want to be treated. It's the golden rule at the end of the day. When you go to your commercial bank, again, it's about the almighty dollar. But with us, we want to treat the customer the way we would be treated, the way we want to be treated.
That's huge, man. And I would say that we've modeled Arrowhead Land Company around the same type of culture because it gets to be so transactional that it feels like nobody cares about anybody. And if you can go above and beyond and provide that extra experience, spend time with these people, really get to know them, understand their needs, understand their family dynamic, whatever else they want to share, it just gives you insight as to how to better help them accomplish their goals instead of looking at finances or looking at a piece of paper or a spreadsheet and saying, yep, we can help you, or nope, sorry, we can't.
Absolutely. We get to know the backstory on the customer. We try to know as much as we can. And that's one thing I encourage customers when they come in any industry, especially to the lending side, is be fully transparent with your lender. Because at the end of the day, we're going to find out anyway. So it's best just to that first foot out, just be truthfully 100% transparent with everybody.
Yeah, that's the only way to do business, man. And I think people, maybe the reason that they're not 100% transparent right out the gate is because the whole process it's a nerve-wracking type of experience in most cases, unless you're working with somebody like yourselves who can help calm you down a little bit and make the process smoother. And, typically they have a goal in mind, just like when purchasing or selling a piece of property, there's always a goal that's pushing things.
Exactly.
And if you guys understand their goals, then you can get more creative potentially on your end of things to help them reach those goals.
Exactly. And I want to reiterate what you said, about as far as providing that service to customers, we encourage our customers to come in and sit down with us and take time so we can understand their operation, because we can determine and make a better decision that would benefit them. It's a win-win for everybody when we do that and when we take that time and visit with a customer. The customer feels like we're actually truly taking care of them, which we are, and we truly feel like that customer has some skin in the game because they're coming in and taking the time to meet with us. At a commercial bank, it's typically, like you said, you come in, here's your application, here's your balance sheet, they look at it and then go on down the road. With us, it's not. We take the time.
Yeah. Man, I think I want to segue into the general population. I feel like has this perception of farmers and ranchers, because they have 500 head of cattle or they own 1,000 acres or, and they think, oh man, these farmers and ranchers, they got it made, they own all this land. But I mean, a lot of these operations, it's pretty thin, you know what I mean? And that's where I think you guys are so important in what you do for these farmers and ranchers. And what I want to touch on specifically is the new landowner, the new farmer or rancher who's trying to get into the business. Last time you guys were in here, you talked about some really creative strategies whether it's Rural First working with AgCredit or, a combination of the two working with FSA. Can you speak to that a little bit without going into too great of detail? But I think it's important for people to know that there's some unique options out there for people who are the first time farmers and ranchers.
Okay. A lot of bankers have that old stigma that they don't want to make a loan happen. They don't want to make a loan. But with us, we try to do everything we can to make that loan. If you've got somebody coming in that is young, beginner farmer, we have special programs for that in the AgCredit system and Farm Credit system. We call it the YBS program, where for the first 5 years, we will actually discount that customer's rate in order to help them afford that property and cash flow it that much easier. We also partner with FSA. If you've got somebody that's young coming in that wants to buy an 80 or 120 or whatever size tract it is, we'll potentially partner with them because we are a preferred lender with the Farm Service Agency, and we could do like 50% of the loan. Customer can bring 5% to the table, and then FSA will do 45%. And so the customer gets to get that property they want, not have to put 25, 30% down. It's just 5% down.
That's huge, man, because would you say it's fair to say that the down payment is the biggest thing stopping most people from owning land?
I would actually say that 100%.
Yeah.
It's down payment and then credit are the two biggest issues that we see on our side.
Mm-hmm. And how can somebody... aside from paying their debts and, taking care of their finances, how have you been able to help folks get their credit in a place where, say, they have the down payment, but maybe they don't have the credit, whether they went through a divorce and it suffered or, whatever that might be? How do you help people in that way?
The biggest thing I always tell customers, and this has been my whole career, is live within your means. That is the key. Live within your means. The other thing too is just be responsible when it comes to your finances and stuff. I understand, life happens, divorce happens, death happens. You can't help that kind of stuff, but just be very adamant about trying to stay on your game when it comes to those life events. I've had customers that when I ran their credit and looked at everything, their credit score might be less than par for us, but we look at the reason why it's less than par. If it was due to a death, if it was due to an unseen circumstance, like I've had customers that unfortunately they lost their jobs because they were diagnosed with cancer and they had to lay out of a job for 12 months. And so we look at those instances. Like I said the other day here, you have lenders that are black and white. We operate in the gray. We try to do what we can do to help that customer, and we look at the backstory, why their credit score is what it is. Now, if you get John that comes in off the street that just doesn't pay his bills and he's got 20 past due loans and bad credit, we're not going to loan to him because he doesn't take care of business.
Yeah.
But if you have that customer that truly does take care of business, but life just kicked them in the butt once, we're going to help them.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you talk about living in the gray, and we talk about that a lot too, and not from like a deceptive or risky perspective, but you have to be willing to be creative for these folks to make deals happen sometimes. And if you're working with somebody who's not going above and beyond to get creative for you, they're not the person you should be working with.
Exactly.
Whether it's an agent or whether it's your lender, there are ways to make things happen. Deals are not always black and white, and you have to get creative. And that's where somebody who's knowledgeable like yourself comes into play and can oftentimes take something that maybe wouldn't have worked elsewhere, but you can make it work for them.
Exactly. It's not just the knowledge, but it's the fact that you care for people and the care for your customers and you want what's best for them. It goes back to the golden rule like we were talking about. Life happens. There's no other explanation for it. And when it comes to things like that, we just want to do what's best for the customer. And if a customer truly can't afford something, we're not going to beat around the bush. We're going to say, hey, come back to us in a year or two when things might progress and get better, or ask for some additional documentation or something to prove that they can repay it. And so we do go above and beyond. It's not just that cookie cutter yes or no answer.
Yeah. And so what about the folks who are not quite ready? They know they want to own land, or they know they want a farm, they know they want a ranch, maybe they just want to own a piece of hunting land, maybe they just want to live in the country on 5 or 10 acres and get out of the city, get out of town, but they know they're not quite there. I'm sure y'all work with plenty of people who are not ready to pull the trigger on something right now. I mean, we do it as agents, and of course we're limited. If somebody's not ready to buy something, we have to say, hey, the market can change a lot in 6 months, 8 months from now till the time you're ready. But you hold their hand a little bit. What do you recommend to those folks who say, Jason, we're going to buy something, it's only a matter of time, but we're just not quite ready? What steps can we be taking right now to prepare ourselves? Or what do you recommend for preparing for this down payment, or making sure we've got enough in savings to afford what we're looking for? I mean, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I always kind of go back to that old Will Rogers quote, don't wait to buy land. Have you know what I'm talking about?
Buy land and wait.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Buy land and wait. And so if a customer comes in and they're young and they're wanting to buy that, wanting to buy grandpa's place back, or just buy an 80 acres or a 40 acres or a 10 acres, whatever it may be as far as the acres purchasing, if right now they cannot afford that, I highly encourage them to set up a account that they have minimal access to, like a savings account or something, and just each month slide a little bit in there and hide it from themselves, because that way, and you'll be amazed over time, just a little bit by little bit, how it adds up to a significant amount that you could actually use for a down payment on property. The other thing, that if a customer comes in that's a young beginner, we try to encourage them to let us visit with them in FSA to help them with that down payment. So there are a lot of avenues for us in order to be able to help that customer purchase that land. But at the end of the day, the weight falls on the customer to save that money for the down payment and to have all their finances in line.
Yeah. So on the opposite end of the spectrum, for somebody who's more well-established and they're tired of the stock market, the ups and downs, or maybe they're ready to get out of Chicago and into the country, and maybe that's a bad example. We're here in Oklahoma. They're ready to get out of Tulsa and they want to get down around the McAllister area or something. They don't always have to have cash on hand to get into something like this either. I mean, maybe they have other equity and other real estate or, things like that. So what are some creative ways that somebody who's a little more established can go about purchasing a piece of land without having to take the cash for the down payment and go the traditional route,
Yeah.
I'll say?
We've got a lot of customers that, as they increase their assets as far as real estate, and they build that natural equity from making their payments. So say you've purchased a property 10 years ago that was 80 acres, but then that next 80 acres next door is coming up for sale. Well, we can look at taking the equity out of that first property and helping them buy the second property with no money down, depending on what it appraises at. Of course, we would have to refinance that first one and help them buy the second one, but we could use that equity for them out of that property and assist them in buying another property. Same with any customers that might have an ag business, anything in the ag sector at all, we could potentially look at helping them finance and pull the equity out of that to buy more land.
Yeah. Cool.
Now, when it comes to, and it's funny, you were talking about coming out of Chicago. This week alone, I've already had 3 calls from people from California, one from Texas, and I think the other one's from Ohio. And they're wanting to relocate to Oklahoma because of the political atmosphere. And I told them, it's like, hey, I fully understand that, and we'll help you any way we can. But there has been a huge influx of that due to the politics in other areas, people wanting to come to Oklahoma.
Yeah. So do you see, and this may be kind of a vague question, but do you continue to see the rural lending capabilities becoming more attractive over time based on what seems like a flux of people trying to get out of the cities and move into the country? And I know we said we wouldn't get political, but I'm really passionate about this, as I know you are too. There's so much beauty in what the country lifestyle has to offer. And I really feel like for the first time in our society, I don't know if it's social media, I don't know if it's a presidential election, I don't know if definitely COVID had something to do with it, but people are seeing the value in getting into the country and getting away from the city. So do you see, as far as the lending world goes, that there's going to continue to be more attractive options for folks, or newer options or newer capabilities, just like Rural First has not been around forever, you know? What do you see 5, 10, 20 years down the road from now?
I see you're 100% correct. That rural lifestyle is really starting to appeal to more and more people because they have the freedom to do what they want. They don't have an HOA. They don't have anybody in the city telling them, mow your grass, do this. Their kids can run around. They can raise chickens, pigs, goats, whatever they want to. They have that freedom. And I think that has probably been one of the biggest selling points for the rural properties in Oklahoma, has been the freedom to do what you want with your property. Now, when it comes to the actual marketability and the product side for the lending, Rural First really has, I would say, filled a niche and a void that nobody else really has even, internally within Oklahoma AgCredit, we've been saying this for years, that there's a niche market that no lender has really been aggressive about. And that's that 1 to 25 to 40 acre mark of, a rural lifestyle, rural properties. And Rural First has been around about 6 years now, and I think it's like $2 billion in assets and everything. So they've really blown up. But they cater to those people that want to get back to their roots, back to the rural community, back out into the country, back out into the woods, even if it's a recreational property. We fully understand that people want to get back to the country life.
Yeah. And I want you to elaborate on this a little more, because traditionally speaking, your traditional ag lenders, they wouldn't touch properties like that because they needed to see farm income or ranch income or a business plan or, something to where they felt protected. And then, your residential commercial type of lenders, it's outside of their wheelhouse too, because even 20, 30, 40 acres, it's different. There's a lot of value in that land. So Rural First, they've been able to fill that. What would you say has been the biggest eye-opening experience in terms of somebody's been talking with a traditional ag lender or a traditional commercial residential lender, and then they come to you and then everything just seems easy and it makes sense? And
that goes back to what we were saying earlier, is we understand agriculture. When a commercial banker typically looks at a customer's Schedule F, which is their farm deductions and stuff on their taxes, they don't give them credit for a lot of the interest and depreciation stuff that we know everybody has. And so we're able to look at adding that back to benefit the customer to truly reflect their ag income. when that kind of thing comes in, when you're talking about if you have somebody moving from the city to the country, we also look at if their projected income. So if you get somebody that says, hey, I'm looking at buying 5 head of cattle, we'll work with that customer. We will look at the markets to see what their potential profitability will be. Whereas if you go to the bank, they're not going to do that typically. So that's another one of those customer service and extra steps that we take to help the customer project their ag income.
It's awesome, man. And we're talking about Oklahoma here, but tell everybody where Rural First and AgCredit exists right now, because, I mean, you guys expand way outside of Oklahoma.
Oklahoma AgCredit is limited to 60 counties in Oklahoma. We have 17 locations. 60 counties is what our coverage is here. But Rural First, we basically go from California, Hawaii, and all the way over to Tennessee, Kentucky, with our partnerships and our home team, which is the Mid-America Farm Credit System. But we have a very wide coverage area now. In the last couple of years, we have just blown up exponentially. I mean, it's just growing because it's not just an Oklahoma thing with that niche market. It is a nationwide thing. Customers wanting to buy small acreages out in the country to get out of the city and urban life.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I've sold real estate in several different states, and I would say Oklahoma is by far the loosest in terms of restrictions and, allowing you to do what you want with your land. And I think that's really special because a lot of other places, it's already chopped up, it's already mitigated. There's zoning requirements, and I mean, there's just all kinds of things.
We love freedom in Oklahoma.
Yeah. Well, hey, our brokerage slogan, inspiring American freedom through land ownership, man. And I tell you, it's pretty free here in Oklahoma. But man, I just think lending is probably the most misunderstood part of the real estate transaction from my experience being in this business. Mm-hmm. One component of that is the appraisal process. And when you guys were in here speaking before, I brought that up because there's probably people listening to this who can sympathize with this, where an appraisal has caused problems in their real estate deal for whatever reason. There was a catch-up period there where property values were skyrocketing and appraisals were causing problems. So can you speak to the appraisal process of Rural First? Because I think it's unique what you guys do, and you work with third-party appraisers. And just touch on the appraisal process in general as far as lending goes for a piece of rural real estate. But then if you want to talk about how Rural First does things specifically, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah. Within the Oklahoma AgCredit system, we use internal appraisers. These are on-staff appraisers that continuously keep their, monitoring of the market up, and they do their due diligence. They're all highly certified. And so they're very capable. On the Rural First side, what we do is we're all about speed and efficiency on the Rural First side. So what we do is we send out a bid to numerous appraisers, independent appraisers, and we take the one that has the fastest and the best turnaround time with the best price, because we are with that Rural First market versus the land and ag credit market. We're in a little bit faster time crunch than what they are. So we try to close loans 30 to 45 days typically. So the independent appraisers give us that advantage over a commercial bank because we do have speed on our side. Because most of your commercial banks are going to mess with ag land on a typical basis. So they're going to have to try to find a specific appraiser that is specializing in ag land where we already have them on staff. And so that's another benefit of dealing with the farm credit system, is the knowledge and the on-staff employees that we have.
Yeah.
Now, when we were talking about the land prices and values, everybody agrees the last 10 years has just basically been wild. Mm-hmm. And during COVID, it shot up again. I would say COVID was probably the catalyst for everybody in the real estate industry, lending for ag land, everything. And so you still kind of had that mentality from the 80s and early 90s that people were saying, land will never be above $1,500, $2,000 an acre in Oklahoma. Well, lo and behold, we're at $4,000 and $5,000 in some areas now. And so that mentality has just taken a little bit longer to catch up in the ag sector, I feel like, than it has in other facets of lending.
Yeah, and I know a lot of that, it's driven by the consumer, of course, but on the ag side of things, these guys are still having to be profitable at mm-hmm. these prices too, So we get told all the time, well, you guys are the ones driving up the price of land. And, it's not us. It's
the market. It's what people are willing to pay.
It's the market. Absolutely. But what have you seen on the lending side of things for the folks who are truly trying to make a go of the farming and ranching lifestyle? It's their income. It's their way of life. what have these land prices done to those folks?
It's made that profit margin extremely thin. We're having to see more and more people get off the family farm as full-time farmers and go get a town job. That's what we call them, town jobs. And so in order to afford that land, because if you just look at the cost of just chemicals and feed and just look at diesel, I mean, everything, that profit margin for these farmers has gotten so thin that it's gotten difficult for a lot of them, and I think it's just going to get potentially worse, as more regulations come down the pike and, prices continue to increase. Inflation's killed a lot of our guys, and then with the cattle market doing what it's done over the last 4 or 5 years, up and down, it's been hard for a lot of the customers to project herd growth and stuff like that just because of the market.
Yeah. I mean, these folks are trying to feed the world. And then, I said we wouldn't get political, but let's get political a little bit. I mean, you have people who are worried about cow farts impacting our oxygen, our ozone layer. I mean, what would you tell those people? Like, if you met somebody in the street and they were like, these ranchers, they need to manage this stuff, they're hurting our environment and blah, blah, blah. I mean, what would you truly say to those people to help them understand?
The first thing I would ask if somebody from the urban environment was asking that question is, well, what kind of vehicle do you drive?
Yeah.
How much, and most of them are driving, Tahoes or Suburbans and stuff like that. And that vehicle is going to put off more emissions than those cattle ever will. And so that was usually, I've actually had people say that. And that's like, well, what type of vehicle do you drive?
Yeah.
When you put, the proof's in the pudding, you quit driving that gas guzzler, then we can talk. But those cattle are a necessity for life. Those cattle feed the world, like you said. They're natural. And a lot of people from the urban environment don't understand that because they've been removed from the ag field in generation, like 2, 3, 4 generations. Some of them have never even been around agriculture, so they don't understand it. And so once you get that many generations removed from being exposed to agriculture, you run into those people in the urban environment that just don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah, you always hear think a farmer, think a rancher, and maybe we hear it just because we're immersed in the culture and the lifestyle. But I mean, quite literally, those people should be thanking these folks. They're the reason they can go out to a nice steak dinner at a fancy restaurant, and they're out there doing their thing, rain or shine, sleet or snow. I mean, whatever it is, to make sure the world is fed, and it's a big deal, especially. And again, we'll just keep the political train rolling here. But you've got countries like China and other folks who are trying to own American land, and it could eventually become a problem, if all the farmers and ranchers can't be profitable and they finally say, to heck with it, I'm tired of these folks who don't care and they're talking about my cattle farting and, blah, blah, blah. And then China, meanwhile, is buying up farmland and buying up ranch land. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
One thing I would say is, as a society, we have to be realistic with our goals. China's already expanded into Africa. They're expanded in South America. They actually, a lot of their farms in Africa were ran out by the locals there because they saw what they were doing. The American society as a whole, in my opinion, just has to get really realistic. Do you want to import our food from other countries, or do you want the safety and security of being able to get American-grown beef, American-grown wheat, American-grown corn? I mean, there's some things, of course, we can't grow here, but that we can grow, we need to capitalize on. We need to help the farmers be able to produce more and not go to our competition overseas. I mean, look how much beef is being imported from South America, Argentina, and everything. We're hindering the American farmers by doing that.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's where, as a hunter myself, I'm not a farmer, I'm not a rancher. I call myself a deer farmer sometimes, which is even less profitable than actual farming. But man, I think that's where the wild game aspect comes into play too, where to be able to have your own natural wild meat supply and to be able to go out and hunt your own food and harvest these animals to feed your families, that to me is the most rewarding part of land ownership. And I know that y'all work with a lot of recreational buyers too.
Absolutely.
We've naturally talked about farmers and ranchers here, but as it pertains to the recreational buyer, I mean, is there anything you want to add for the hunters out there who have no intentions of having cattle or planting crops? They just want to be able to hunt and fish and spend time on the land. What would you say to those folks?
We specialize in recreational properties. We I know as an association, we have several high fence properties for people that do want to do the deer farming like you're talking about to help the genetics and increase the population as far as the genetic aspect. And then on the rural first side, we will do the 15, 20 to 40 acre tracts for people that just want a recreational property to play on, deer hunt, whatever. With those, as long as they have the cash flow and capability to repay it, we can run them as recreational properties. They don't have to have any ag production on there. It is a true 100% recreational property.
Man, that's awesome. And that's really unique. I know that doesn't sound like much for maybe folks who are not exposed to the dealings that we have every day, but you can't walk into any bank down the street and get that same type of service. I mean, there's just certain banks are equipped for certain types of lending. I think that's fair to say.
Absolutely. They're lot and block lenders.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it matters if you're wanting to live in the country or if you're wanting to buy a piece of land to hunt and fish on, who you work with matters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a chance to kind of shout out some of your guys across the state or people you work with. I mean, what is, if somebody's wanting to reach out to someone, how do they go about doing that? How do they go about getting in touch with somebody from Rural First, whether it's, I mean, can they call you directly? I know you've got a team that supports you, and talk to us about that.
Within the farm credit system here in Oklahoma, with Oklahoma AgCredit, we have multiple locations, and they're very regionalized. You know, we've got the Northwest, Northeast, Southwest, and Southeast. And so you can go to our website, Oklahoma AgCredit, and you can pull up all of our locations. You can get in direct contact with a branch in your area. With the Rural First side, I have a peer over in Western Oklahoma, Dakota, that he does the same thing I do in the eastern side of the state. And you can either track me down through the Oklahoma AgCredit website, or you can get on Rural First, their website. Follow me on Facebook. I've got a lot of customers that find me, find my professional, not my personal profile, and all my contact information is on there. And I field a lot of calls, people calling in wanting to buy ag property, and they come to me, and I can send them to the ag guys. And that's back to that personal connection that I'm like, hey, you know, I've got a product, but the guys on the ag credit side have got a better product that can better suit what you're wanting to do. And so we kind of field them, the customer, in the right direction if they call us.
Yeah. And what about, I know you personally are in Oklahoma and you're with Oklahoma AgCredit, but what about Rural First in other states? I know you're not licensed in other states per se, but can you just touch on, for the folks listening that maybe don't live in Oklahoma or they're looking in other states, what does that process look like for them?
Absolutely. I mean, Rural First, again, you know, I have a very tight-knit relationship with the guys in Texas, and that's the good thing about the Rural First family is that we look out for each other, and we still are able to take care of the customer the best way we can. So if somebody does call me, but they're looking at buying a property in Kansas or Texas, I'm going to give them direct contact with the Rural First lender in that state. They can go to the main Rural First website again and find a list of all the bankers in their areas in their state. But granted, you can call any Rural First loan officer in the nation, and you might be 4 states over, but they're going to put you in contact with the lender you need. They take that one extra step to help you out.
Yeah, that's awesome. One thing I can say too about you, and this will resonate with a lot of people, is you pick up your phone and you pride yourself on that. And this industry, both the real estate industry and the lending industry, probably the biggest gripe I hear from the client consumer is that they can't get their agent or their lender to answer the phone. And for sure, the biggest gripe from agents is, well, I can't get the lender to answer the phone, you know? So I just wanted to give you a little shout out there. And for the folks listening who are wanting to work with someone who answers the phone, gets back to you in a timely manner, I mean, these guys do that.
Communication is key. I mean, because if you can't communicate with your realtor or your banker, do you really feel like they have your best interest in the foremost up front?
For sure.
And that's one thing that we, as a association, we really do pride ourselves in communication, being in contact constantly with you all as realtors or the customer. We've even got to the point now on our side with Rural First here in Oklahoma, we will start, when we do our emails, we'll start an email thread with everybody in there. So everybody's on the same page, the customer, the closing company, the realtor. You know, we've even thrown the appraisers in there from time to time, so they know what's going on as well. And so it goes back to communication is key.
Yeah, no doubt. So we've talked a lot about customer service and taking care of the client and just going above and beyond for them. But we live in a new day and age where things are digital, things are moving fast. I mean, a lot of times speed and efficiency, like you said earlier, it can make or break a deal, you know? So tell us about Rural First. you bring up speed and efficiency. I feel like everybody says, oh, yeah, we can get you approved in less time for blah, blah, blah. I mean, what really sets you guys apart in that regard?
The thing that sets us apart from our competition here in Oklahoma is 100% that we are try to be non-paper based. And when I say that is everything from our pre-qualification that typically is a 15-20 minute operation for me once I get it back from the customer. We send that out electronically. The applications are sent out electronically. The customer submits all their tax returns, everything through our portal system. And so if everything aligns perfectly, we can potentially get a loan in 30 days to 35 days closed. I've had some that have actually been 20 days because title work and abstracting was already done. And so it was a 20-day turnaround for a home and land purchase. And now that's kind of the unicorn, but on average they're 30 to 45 days because we do everything electronically. Now on the ag side, they still have the old school papers and balance sheets and all of that, but they need more information when it comes to that because of your ag operation. And so they do have to do a little bit more due diligence on that side than what I do.
Well, and they're probably working with more old boys that come in and say, I don't have that email thing. And, you know, if you need something from me, I'll come in here and I'll sign it right in front of you. I mean,
and you're 100% correct in that. And you know, even in my business on the rural side, I still have some of those customers that want that face-to-face interaction, and we will go meet them. You know, same with our ag guys; they will drive out in the field and meet their customers and make themselves, you know, available for them. And it goes back to that key of customer service.
Yeah, it's awesome. One thing I just thought of when y'all were in here last and you were speaking to some of our organization, you guys talked about doing something for part-time farmers. I think it was GFI.
The gross farm income. Yes.
Gross farm income. Speak to that for a second.
When a customer comes to us for a part-time farmer classification, we need 5 open acres of ag production, and they have to produce $500 worth of gross farm income off that property. It can be from cattle, it can be from goats, chickens, hay production, anything like that. As long as they have $500 GFI, we can look at getting them approved as a part-time farmer and get them a part-time farmer classification.
And what's the benefit to that? Let's take it a step further. Why would somebody want that?
With the part-time farmer, there's tax benefits on that aspect because you can go to the county and get your farm tax exemption because you are a producer at that point in time. On our side, we really don't differentiate in the rates between a farmer and a non-farmer or a full-time farmer. But when we do have that classification of a part-time or full-time farmer, we are able to go a little bit deeper into their financials and give them a little bit more leniency because of everybody knows the ag sector. It's not always the best industry to be in because of profitability. And so sometimes we do give them a little bit more leniency on their production.
Yeah, cool. Interesting. Man, what else am I missing here, Jason?
Something else I forgot a while ago when we were talking about what sets us apart from other lenders is our loan conversions. So, and I'm going to throw some interest rates out here. Today, my rate on a 30-year home was 6.75, okay? But in 12 months, if rates decrease, we'll actually reach out to that customer and say, hey, you now qualify for 6%. Would you be interested in doing a loan conversion? And with the loan conversion, we drop that interest rate down to that new lower rate and lock it in without having to do a full refi. Now, on the ag side, they can do that every 6 months. On the rural first side, I can do it every 12. And when was the last time your banker called you and said, hey, do you want to drop your interest rate without doing a refi?
No doubt.
And so we save customers thousands of dollars by doing that.
That's huge, man, because what does a typical refi cost someone?
I'd say probably $500 to $7,500.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, and that's on an average property. You get some of those bigger properties, it could be $10,000 or $15,000. Time you do abstracting, title work, and new appraisal and everything.
And you're essentially rebooting the entire process,
and you're starting the loan all over. Whereas with us, you keep the original term and amortization, and we just drop the interest rate.
That's huge because I want to touch on that for a second because I was talking to Will. He wasn't able to be here when you guys were last in the office last time, and you had talked about doing that and how your terms stayed the same. You don't have to restart everything. And he's like, wait, you don't? And I was like, yeah, if what they're telling me is true, that's what they said, you know? And that's super rare. You just don't run into that.
At all. Like I said, you know, you just don't hear that in the commercial banking world that a lender's willing to drop that interest rate. And to be fully transparent, I mean, it benefits everybody. It benefits the customer. It benefits us because we are a nonprofit. And so it's just a win-win for everybody. And something, too, I thought about this. We were talking about the construction in rural resident loans. We do a one-time close. So you have a customer that comes in and wants to buy this 20, 30 acre tract and they want to build at the same time. We can do it all at one time and do a one-time close on the construction without having to refi it in 12 months like your traditional bank. And the reason why we do that is because we keep all of our loans in-house with the Farm Credit system. They don't ever get sold out like Bank of America or anybody else like that or Vanderbilt. They stay with the Farm Credit system, so we only charge one time.
Man, that's huge.
That's another $7,000 to $10,000 savings right there.
That's huge. And, you know, you don't realize you're getting into that until you're into it. And then you're like, wait, you're going to charge me another $7,000 to do this? You know, like what happened to being creative with me and working with me? And, you know, so those are just learning curves that people run into. But what you guys offer is really special in that sense. It definitely helps mitigate some of the tougher aspects of lending. Man, so everybody always says, what do you think is going to happen with interest rates? What do you think is going to happen with land values? You know, we've got an election coming up. Nobody's going to chase you down with burning torches and pitchforks here, but I am curious, what is your perspective on the future here? What do you think happens with interest rates? What do you think happens with land values? You know, we're coming off of probably the biggest land boom we've seen in years and years, you know? So what do you think's happening next?
I wished I had that crystal ball to be able to forecast that. You know, the Fed keeps saying they're going to drop rates again in September. So we'll see what they do. We did have a decrease, you know, and of course, then on Monday we had the stock market issues. So as far as the industry is concerned, a lot of it is going to be contingent what happens in November. You know, how things are going to progress up or down. Now, as far as land prices, I think sky's the limit. I don't think we'll ever see land go down. There's more and more people buying it for investment purposes. There's more and more people wanting to move out of the urban areas. So I don't foresee land ever going back down to where it was. I think it's just going to keep going up. And you can look at the other states and the other markets and see that progression of the land prices just continuing to go up. As you know, our population just grows. People want to relocate, and so I think they're not making any more land. So that land prices are just going to, it's supply and demand.
Yeah. You being here in Oklahoma, I'm going to give you an opportunity also to pitch someone on coming to Oklahoma as opposed to a different state, and working with you as opposed to somebody in a different state. So why come to Oklahoma? Why buy land? Why own land? Why farm or ranch or hunt in Oklahoma compared to some of these other states?
Goes back to what we were talking about earlier, the freedom that Oklahoma provides. We're not overly regulated like a lot of the other states. Our property taxes are very reasonable compared to our neighbors to the south. And so if you can get around not being able to get Wi-Fi in some of these areas, I think you should come on into Oklahoma. Other than that, I mean, it's a great state to live in. We're still family and country oriented. You know, you still know your neighbors. You still drive down the country roads and you can still wave at people. And so it's just, it's like going back in time. I mean, when I travel and go other places, you know, it's a totally different feel and atmosphere in these other states and cities. Whereas here in Oklahoma, it is like a step back in time where people truly care about each other. And so that would be one of my sales pitch to get people to Oklahoma.
Cool. Do you have any crazy stories from your time in the lending business of, whether it's people you've run into, people you've worked with, things that have happened while you've been out and about meeting with customers, clients? I'm just curious because we have tons of them in the real estate business, you know? So I'm curious on the banking side of things. People, when they think of a banker, you know, they think, suit and tie and, you know, going golfing on Wednesdays and then again on Fridays. And I mean, there's some stereotypes around banking individuals, but you guys are different. You're out in the trenches. You're with the customer. So I'm just curious if you have any cool stories or maybe anything you want to share.
Let's see. I've got several commercial banking. I'm not going to go into those, but on the ag side, probably one of the craziest ones I had before they legalized medical and medicinal marijuana in Oklahoma. Go to this chicken house, you know, we're doing an inspection. There's chickens in there, but there's also pot plants growing all over the place. And so we weren't supposed to see those. And then when they legalized marijuana in Oklahoma, you know, it was a fair game. So probably that one. And then trying to help customers round up cattle, you know, that's always interesting when you're out there and you're trying to help them do that. But there's been some pretty interesting things. Some of them I can't talk about, but there's been some pretty good ones.
So let's touch on that for a second, because the whole marijuana grow house thing was, man, it just got out of control here in Oklahoma really fast. You know, before, like we talked about, Oklahoma's pretty loose. And so before we knew it, all this had happened, and then the state's like, hey, whoa, we got to pump the brakes on this. What did you guys see on the lending side of things? I mean, a lot of those folks were buying with cash, but there was plenty of people seeking financing too, I'm sure. So what did y'all see?
We took a hard stance and a no on that because it's not federally regulated. And then just morally, we just didn't want any part of it because there was too many issues. And so we distanced ourselves from that whole industry as a whole because, we had tons of customers coming in, calling us, wanting to buy land. And if we found out there was any type of marijuana production, we couldn't touch it.
Yeah.
And so we shied away from everything having to do with it.
And is that still the case?
Yes, Oklahoma AgCredit, the farm credit system, rule first, we don't want anything because it's not federally regulated.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, man, I always say this is the Tied to the Land podcast. What does the land really mean to you? Is it the reason for why you're doing what you're doing, where you're at? I don't know. You haven't talked about if you own land or, if you guys live on land. I'm just curious, what does the land mean to you? I know it's your career. I know it's a lifestyle, but you personally speak to that.
Personally, I love the land. Our family, there in the Chicago area, we actually date all the way back before statehood. We still have the original 40-acre allotment with a log cabin base. And my parents have a couple hundred acres there. Then my brother and I have bought land around it and just keep that to the family farm. And so it's been just generational hand down in my family. So I understand when somebody comes in and they're like, hey, I want to buy Grandpa's place. I want to do my best to help that customer buy that because it's been in their family. And that's something that, like we said earlier, they're not making any more of it. And so if you can help a young person obtain that, it's their future. And that's why you have to look at it as I'm helping this person obtain their future, their goals, their dreams. And as a lender, that's the way we look at it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I know for me, it's shaped my entire life. I didn't know it would. I mean, I got a late start to hunting and the outdoors. I mean, you always went fishing with Dad as a kid and, saw him bring the buck back home. You hold the antlers and everything else. But I mean, for me, like when I really got to experience the outdoors, it's just like my life changed in ways I could never imagine,
The outdoors for somebody, there's another way to put it. It's just healing. If you want to disconnect and you want to really get out there and just time to think, and that's why I was raised in the woods. My dad was a huge woodsman. He taught me to hunt and do everything. But the crazy thing is a lot of times we wouldn't kill anything. We just go out there and watch them play, watch the deer play and stuff like that, because it was more about taking care of the land, taking pride in the land than it was actually going out and harvesting an animal. It was just being there, and I think that's what a lot of people are missing in their lives is simplicity. We're all married to these phones or our laptops and stuff. And I think being out in nature really provides that simplicity for them. And it's time just to disconnect and figure out who you are as an individual. Take your family, I've had a lot of customers that they love going to these recreational properties that don't have utilities, don't have internet or anything like that, because they can just totally disconnect and be with their family. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been a game changer for a lot of people.
Yeah, man. Bringing it back to lending, I mean, it's special what you guys are doing for that reason, because when you really boil it down to why are we doing this, it's to help people get into the outdoors so they can experience all the things that you were just talking about, which in return creates a better culture and way of life amongst our society. People are more mentally healthy. People are spending more family time. They value and appreciate the land and what it has to offer. It's just special. It's different, and we're blessed to be in a niche business, I feel like. Mm-hmm. And I hope this podcast gets out there because you've shed a ton of light as to why it's important who you use as a lender. And at the end of the day, if you can't find a lender to work with, you might not get to experience some of those things that we were just talking about. You know?
And I think as society as a whole would benefit from spending more time out in the woods.
No doubt.
I mean, get back in tune and just be simple again.
No doubt.
Get out of that urban atmosphere, the hustle and bustle, and just enjoy life.
Yeah. It's so funny because, we all have friends, and you can probably think of some friends who they prefer the urban lifestyle, but you get them out into the woods for a weekend or they come visit you. And I mean, they just eat it up.
Absolutely.
They love it. I mean, I'm like, yeah, we're not just a bunch of country bumpkins, rolling around in the grass. I mean, it's fun, from riding side by sides to shooting guns to fishing to hunting to gardening. I mean, whatever it is, there's just something about that culture that people are attracted to. And if they've never experienced it, I always say you've got to experience it at least once,
Exactly.
and then it'll probably change your life like it did mine.
And that's what I would say. Humanity was not designed to be in a concrete building all the time.
Amen.
We were designed to be out in nature, enjoy it, and get back to our roots, basically, who we are.
Yeah. Well, man, if somebody wants to get back to their roots and who they're supposed to be as a human that God created, how do they get a hold of you to get them started in that direction?
Said you can call me at my 539-525-9021 number, or you can get me up on Facebook. Look for Jason Ramsey on the Rule First and go to our website. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to get a hold of me. I'm not hard to find.
Yeah, right on. And if he can't help you, he'll point you in the right direction. And he's made that very clear to us a lot of times. So, guys, this is the Tied to the Land podcast. I'm Andrew Schultz. Jason Ramsey, thank you for hanging with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you guys next time.